Hello everyone, this is the official demo video for Insurance Toolkits, quoting, underwriting, and point-of-sale software for final expense, term, mortgage protection, and Medicare supplement products. Before I begin, today's date is November 22nd, so the demo is current as of today. If at any time in the future you're curious to see what products we have in the system, just click on any of the tabs up at the top of the website, scroll down, and you can see the carriers that we offer. If you click on term, you can see the carriers for term, and then for Supp, you can do the same thing. So we're going to go to the login and log in here. Now, one thing to keep in mind that we do have a mobile app. So if you're on iPhone or Android, you can use the app. However, if you're on iPad, we highly recommend you use the website. And the main reason is on the apps, it's not always completely up to date with what you can access. So for example, on Android as of today, we don't yet have term or Supp loaded in. And on the iOS app, we don't yet have Supp loaded in, it's just FX and term. So whenever possible, you can use the website. Even if you're on your phone, it'll work just fine. We're going to head over to the account tab. So in the account tab, if you sell over the phone, make sure you turn on the telesales toggle. So this will filter out certain face amounts, companies, depending on, Assurant, for example, if you're selling over the phone, limits the face to 15,000 instead of 40. Certain carriers are not available via voice sign, and other items that are important. So we're going to leave this off for today, but if you do sell over the phone, turn it on. You can set your default state here if you do happen to sell in a certain state most of the time, as many people do. I'm going to leave this as Ohio for the purposes of the demo because most carriers tend to be available in Ohio. And if you do want to refer someone to our system, use the link here, and if they sign up with the link, you get a $20 credit for every person you refer. If for whatever reason you're not sure if they use your link and you want to check, or for any other reason, you can use our live chat here. So our live chat, you can send a message. We're available anytime. We're on Eastern time, so generally business day in 9 to 5 and a few hours after, we'll be on the chat if you need any kind of assistance during the day or when you're making sales. And we're going to head over to the FX tab. So we do have 3 product types supported right now. So simplified term, final expense, and Supp. I'm going to be spending most of the time on the demo today on the FX side. However, just so you're aware, the functionality of all 3 toolkits is the same. So you have your health conditions on the right, client information on the left. The only differences are the interfaces are slightly tweaked because all the products are different. So for term, you have your term length here. For FX, it's a little bit different. You have your payment type menu over here. And for Supp, you have your zip code and plan type field and your plan info, which we'll come back to. So I'm going to head over to the FX tab. And first thing you want to do when you get into the software is set the carriers that do and don't show. So this, for the purposes of the demo, I'm going to leave, actually, what I'll do, I'll turn off the American Amicable has a number of different rate packages, so this is a good example of how easy it is to turn off carriers. So I'm only going to leave Senior Choice turned on, Senior Choice and Family Choice. So we're going to turn off everything else. So whenever you want to turn off a carrier, there's no save button, you just turn it off. We do even have Lincoln Heritage in here, so if you do happen to run into that a lot in the field, it can be helpful to show your client that you're shopping around for them and for them to visually see how much of a better deal that you can get them as opposed to what they might currently have or what they might be looking at or have heard of. Now, there is a separate panel of exclusions, so remember, this first panel is for your accounts. This is what shows for you when you're logged in on the system. This is for the light embeddable tool. So I'm gonna show you what that is in just a second, but this is a separate panel of exclusions. And if you have an agency account, you can determine what does and does not show for your agents down here. So now, what is light embeddable HTML? So that is going to be in your settings page. So in the settings page, you have 2 things. You have your widget. So if you have a website, we do have TCPA compliant widget. If the person enters their contact information, you get an email notification. It gets automatically pushed to your internal HIPAA compliant CRM. However, there's no underwriting on this, and we will be adding more functionality into it at the beginning of 2022. So right now, it's just as you see it. It's a basic quoter. You can use it for agent facing if you want. People can just put in basic information for FX, term, and get basic quotes. The link here, so this is the light link, so anyone with the URL can run a basic quote without underwriting, so you can share it with a colleague, bookmark it on your phone or computer, or share it around as you see fit. So the nice thing with the link is that you do not need to log in. So it can be convenient, and I'm going to show you an example here. If I was on my phone, this is what my phone would look like. I can quickly just pop this up on Google Chrome or Safari if I don't want to log in and look at everything else, and I can quickly run a quote for the carriers that I have turned on. So it just gives me a quick and easy way to run a quote. Takes 20 seconds to pull it up and pop that in. So that is the light link. Now the other tools that we have before we get to the main part of the system, which is the quoter, the health cheat sheet. So the health cheat sheet, we can just type in any kind of condition, and it's basically an electronic version of those cheat sheets everybody passes around. So if I'm looking at someone who has cancer in the past, I can see for the carriers that I have turned on all the different information of any kind of follow-up questions they ask and the look-back periods, and you can stack conditions on top of each other, so that can be a easy way to look up one or two conditions, which is generally the way that most people use it. The drug lookup is built into the system itself, but if in any case you want to look up maybe one or two medications just to see if they're going to be an issue somewhere, you can pop in the medication, and I'm going pretty fast here, but on the quoter I'll show what everything I'm doing means. You can just run the quote and see what comes up. But again, this is only designed to be used if you're using one or two medications. So we're going to pop over to the quoter, and we're going to skip over quote compare and CRM for now. We're going to come back to those two. So this is the quoter itself. This is where you're going to spend most of your time. Now at any time you can leave the right side blank and you can run quotes on the left side. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change this to graded modified. And we're just going to run a 65-year-old Ohio male. And I'm going to put in 15,000. We're going to leave off height and weight for now. We're going to leave nicotine use off, and we're going to leave the payment type as bank draft. So a very basic quote here. I'm going to run the quote, and it will pop up a list of carriers from least expensive to most expensive, and we always sort graded. In this case, we're only looking at graded modified quotes, but if you're running an underwritten quote, it'll show level, preferred first, and then goes down to graded modified and guaranteed. So it goes right down the line. Now for the graded quotes here, you'll see a few different components of the tile. So for all quotes, if a carrier offers true Social Security billing, we will put the star on. Now remember, just because a carrier offers true Social Security billing does not mean they necessarily take Direct Express cards. So if you do have a carrier with a client with Direct Express, or someone who uses a credit or debit, you can always filter those out here. Just remember that American Amicable is a good example. They don't take Direct Express, but they do have true Social Security billing. But that's a component you can see here, because when you're using true SSB carriers, your persistency will generally be at least 10% higher, if not more, as compared to non-true SSB carriers. Now on the right side of the tiles, we see a few more components. So this is the commission cut indicator. So always know your contract. However, for most products, there's pretty generalized commission cuts. So for Moo Graded in general, for most people, you're going to see about a 40% cut if someone's between 45 and 80 on the graded product. And you can just go down the list on the different products. So again, always know your contract, what the different cuts are, but the indicator here will at least show you if there's probably going to be a cut for the product that you're looking at. Now for the plan info. So plan info is going to tell you on the final expense side what the parameters of that plan are. So graded and modified can mean essentially nothing. So look at Moo here. Moo Graded is modified. It's ROP plus 10% for the first 2 years, and then it's 100% in year 3. Now for American Amicable, it's actually a true graded. So even though they call themselves the same thing, this is a 30, 70, 100 true graded product, whereas Moo is ROP. And you can look at all different kinds of products. You can see that Life Shield here is the same as Moo, whereas, take a look at, well in this case, this is a pretty good example of American Amicable up here, and then if we go down to Ascendo modified is a true modified. So it can be all over the place. If we look at a product like EIWL, this is actually ROP modified in most states, but in 4 states it's true graded, 30, 60, 100. So for a client with dementia, CHF, that can be a full comp, true graded way to get them coverage. And then for other carriers, like a good example is Prime Term to 100. This is a pretty interestingly designed product that you probably don't have memorized, so it's a way that we show there what the actual parameters of the plan are. So always mouse over the plan info, because all these plans structure themselves differently. Liberty Bankers Modified is an interesting one. It's ROP plus 10% in the first 3 years, and then in year 5 and 6, it actually increases the face amount by 5% and 10%. So that's an interesting plan to take a look at. Now, if I take off graded modified, we're just going to run a regular level quote, same parameters. we're going to see a few different components on the tiles here. So when I use the expand menu, as we call it, the arrow, you're going to get a few buttons. So push to CRM, we're going to cover a little bit later in the video. This will push over all the client's drug and health information, the whole quote, into the internal CRM, so you can quickly save it and load it back in later. And if the carrier offers any kind of extras, such as accidental death, 10 pay, 20 pay, paid up at 85, we will actually show those in the expand menu here. Now for certain carriers, and if I take a look at Americo, the accidental death is already built in, so we're not going to show it as a rider, but that is a good thing to keep in mind when you're using the software. Always make sure to use that expand menu in case there's a rider offered. For certain carriers, if they calculate by nearest age, we'll tell you that with the red dot. That's mostly a term thing, but there's a few final expense carriers that do that. So whenever you see the red dot, and we're going to look at that a little bit more on the underwriting side once we start running some underwritten quotes, always look at that here. For excluded carriers, depending on the reason, we'll show them down here and also why. But again, that's more of an underwriting thing that we're going to come back to in just a second here. So now let's run some underwritten quotes. So first thing that we always tell people to do not run underwritten quotes with a face amount of premium. Unless you are 100% dead set on the premium or face amount that you want, it's not a good idea. And the reason is, you might be running, let's say, a quote for $40,000 on an underwritten case, where only one or two carriers might be available. However, if you lowered that face amount by 10 or 15,000, you could have a lot more options, and you could even stack coverage and use two carriers to get to the coverage amount that you want. So when you leave this blank, and I'll show you an example here, it will automatically run at 10,000. So, and I'll show why that's important here. So we're going to leave all this blank. We can leave this at whatever we want. We're just going to leave it as level for now, and we're going to enter in some drug and health information here. So it's always best to enter the medications if you have them. Medications can often paint a different picture than just the health conditions can. But let's say we have somebody who had cancer a while ago, and they're still taking one medication. They're taking tamoxifen. So I'm going to type in tamoxifen. And we're going to see current and past. So the way our underwriting system works is we walk you down a chain of questioning based on what you put in. So we call it a reverse funnel. We always want to show you as little information as we can at the beginning, and then you tell us what you know about that case as it pertains to the carriers you have going forward. So we're going to say past cancer. Now for certain carriers, they ask about the type of cancer. So Transamerica is an example, Security National. They'll ask, generally, if carriers ask, it's about blood or bone marrow, if ever. In this case, tamoxifen, generally it's for people after breast cancer, but we'll just say other, so it's not a blood or bone marrow. Now, they are still currently taking it, so we're not going to touch this. However, it was first filled a while ago. So let's say they were cured of their cancer in 2017. So about 4 years ago. Now we're going to get asked some follow-up questions. We're going to say no to stage A prostate cancer. Have they ever had cancer more than once? We're going to say no. When I say no, keep in mind that it's going to show me next, have they ever had metastatic? Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to change this answer to yes. You can see when I do that, it doesn't ask me about metastatic. That's going to be the next question. It asks me, has the prospect ever had recurrent cancer of the same type? Now this is a good example to show how we ask you questions logically. So if you think about it, you can't have recurrent cancer of the same type if you've never had cancer more than once to begin with. So certain carriers like Mutual of Omaha make the distinction. They specifically ask, have they had cancer of the same type more than once? So if you answer this question, no, have they ever had cancer more than once, there's no need for us to show you, have they had recurrent cancer, because that's not logically possible. So we always show you only the information that you need, all the information you need for every carrier that you have selected and nothing more, so that you're not wasting your time or the client's time. And so that you look, of course, as knowledgeable as possible about the products that you're representing. We're going to say metastatic, no, and pancreatic, liver, ovarian, no. So now we've asked every relevant question as it pertains to this medication and the condition that it's tied to in the system. So now I run this quote. We're going to have several level options. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 level options on the carriers I have turned on that we can place this person who's currently taking a cancer medication. Now, a way to outline why it's so important to use the medications, if I'm an agent or if I have an agent who's sitting in front of a client and this client says they have cancer and the agent just doesn't bother to find out what the medication is, let's say they're just typing in the condition here. Yeah, so cancer. And again, we have the 2 main options here, so current and past. We're going to type in past. And it's going to walk me down the same chain of questioning. However, for an agent who might not be familiar with how the underwriting actually works, and they ask the client, okay, when's the last time you took any kind of medication? Did you have any treatment for this condition? And they say, oh, yeah, I still take a medication for it. And if this agent, not knowing any better, didn't dig for that, and we're just going to pop the diagnosis back to where it was in, I think, 2017. Diagnosis 2017. And we're just going to click through all the rest of the follow-up questions. Because this past cancer date is essentially today, they're still taking the medication, you're going to see LGI modified. So that's a good example as to why, not just with our system, but in general, you always want to use and underwrite with the medications, because the medications can often paint a different story than what the client is saying, or what you might even, what you might not know. So we're going to enter in a few different things on this next quote. So I'm going to put in spironolactone, which is a medication that can be used for a number of different things, but we're going to put it in for high blood pressure. And we're just going to say first filled in 2017, but they're still taking it today. I'm going to run this quote, and we're going to see a red dot appear on a few carriers. So certain medications, certain conditions, certain combinations may trigger a either referral to an underwriter. You can look at GCU here. Maybe you need to put a note on the application. American Amicable and some other carriers are carriers where you can do that. We'll put that there just so that you're aware that, you know, this medication, this combination of medications, these health conditions might trigger this case to be referred. It might be a cause for concern for this carrier. Now, that does not mean the case won't eventually get issued preferred, level, standard, whatever you're looking at, but it can still be cause for concern. So it's just an extra piece of information that we give you from an underwriting perspective so that you know what might happen. And what we're going to do next is we're going to use combinations. So the software also recognizes combinations of medications. So we're going to type in, if I can spell, nifedipine. I'm sorry, I can't spell. Nifedipine. And this is what is called a calcium channel blocker. So this is a medication that is often used for high blood pressure. It just reduces the amount of calcium in the arteries. So we're going to hit high blood pressure controlled. And you can notice that we only show reasons why that medication can be taken. So if you put in donepezil, it's probably a good example for me to do that now. It's not going to show me confusion. It's going to show me Alzheimer's, because except in the most crazy, maybe 1 in a million scenario, if a carrier sees donepezil, they're going to see that as a dementia Alzheimer's case. So it's a way that we try to catch people from putting in conditions for medications that might not actually be tied to that medication. I got a message a few weeks ago. Someone said the client was taking omeprazole for atrial fibrillation. And omeprazole is an acid reflux medication. So that person might have atrial fibrillation, but they're not taking omeprazole for that. So that's another good thing we do with the software, is we try to ensure that you're entering a medication for the actual reasons the carriers are going to see it as being taken. And of course, if a drug's on a carrier's knockout list, that's handled by our system, or even if we have a data point that suggests it will be knocked out or rated. So going back to what I was showing before, nifedipine, this is a calcium channel blocker, so we're just going to type that in here. First fill, we'll say 2018. And we're going to type in another medication. So this is a blood thinner, as they're called, or anticoagulants. Warfarin is a common one. So we're going to type in, let's just say this person had, so if a client ever tells you thinning their blood, thrombosis, there's no necessarily cardiac event related with that. I'm going to click on that there. We're going to say first filled 2017. So they just started taking it in 2017, no specific event. And we'll say no, not a chronic pulmonary embolism. And now we're going to enter a beta blocker medication. This is another class of medications that are often used for blood pressure. So we're just going to say high blood pressure controlled here. So beta blockers reduce the amount of adrenaline or epinephrine, so it lowers the heart rate and therefore blood pressure based on that. And because of these three medications, it auto adds coronary artery disease, CAD. So the kind of hallmark for CAD when you're looking at a combination of medications is beta blocker, calcium channel blocker, and a diuretic. Now, if I'm an agent, especially an inexperienced one, you might not think nothing of these three medications. Oh, the client's just taking 2 high blood pressure medications and a blood thinner, and there's no, sorry about that, there's no cardiac event tied to the situation. However, the carrier is probably going to see this as something more, as somebody who just has high blood pressure isn't going to be taking this combination of medications. Another good example, if I take off nifedipine here, so remember we have a beta blocker and we have a blood thinner. I'm going to add a diuretic. So a very common diuretic, spironolactone is one, but furosemide, Lasix. So this can be used for a number of different reasons. So we're going to put high blood pressure controlled. And we're going to say the first fill was 2017, just a few years back. Now this is a fun little tip with furosemide. So for furosemide or Lasix, if they're taking, we'll pop up the menu here. So they're taking more than 60 milligrams. That's generally an indication that they probably have CHF or heart failure. If they're taking 60 or less, there's a chance it could be used for blood pressure. So that's another way that we try to catch the agent here. And if they're unsure, we'll just run it at less than 60. Sometimes the client doesn't know. So we'll pop that in. Now, even though I entered 60 or less, we added CHF here. Now, why did we do that here? So an anticoagulant blood thinner plus a beta blocker plus a diuretic or a water pill or fluid pill, as clients sometimes call them, that is the hallmark indication of congestive heart failure. So when you run these medications and you give them to a carrier, that's probably how they're going to see it. Now, if I disagree with that, if I think, oh no, this client definitely does not have CHF, maybe the carrier that I'm using doesn't check MIB, I can take it off and run the quote without it. However, we put those kind of indications in the system for diabetic complications. Gabapentin and metformin will auto-populate neuropathy. For chronic asthma, we have them all over the place because the medications can often tell a different picture than just what the client is saying. And we consider that to be a very important part of the system. So when I run this case here, we're just going to take everything off besides the atenolol. So a pretty healthy person just taking atenolol here. And we have the carriers popping up. Now I'm ready for the next step. Now I don't care what this number is. All I wanted to do now was what does my client qualify for? So if I'm running 10,000, which is what the software automatically does, every carrier is going to have, if they're available for this case, they're going to have a rate available at 10,000. And 10,000 will give you a pretty good indication of the prices from lowest to highest if you care about that. So in this case, let's just say we're looking at Transamerica for this client. They have true SSB. That's just who we want to go with. So we hit compare. Now we're taken over to the quote compare page. So this is, if I was in person, this is where I would spin my iPad around, or that's what I use. Maybe you use a Surface or a different device. But I'm going to run 3 quotes here. So 10, 12, 5, and 15. And at this point, I would spin my iPad around and I would tell the client, okay, Mr. Jones, we qualified you, we ran you through the system. These are the 3 quotes you've been pre-approved for. You can use whatever language you want. Some people say bronze, silver, gold, 1, 2, 3, ABC, whatever you call it. Generally, people close down with 1 to 3 quotes, and on this page is a perfect way to do it. If you're selling over Zoom, you can share your screen and tell them to pick one. It makes it visual, it makes it real. Again, typically if you're selling in person, you just spin the device around, you've already went through all the underwriting. Which one of these 3 works best for you? You've shopped around, you've shown them the carriers, makes it feel very real and very visual, especially at a point when you haven't necessarily gotten them approved yet. You don't want to show them carrier materials. It shows them that you've, more than most agents they've ever sat in front of, actually done something to qualify them for a certain set of rates. So let's say Mr. Jones says, oh, those are pretty good rates. What can I get for $100 a month? Okay, we'll pop in 100. And for $100 a month, we can get him just about a little over $19,000 of coverage. So it makes it very easy for you when sitting in front of the client to close them down and really have them pick what price they want to continue the application with. And you'll notice when I use that compare button, all the information pushed over. So Transamerica preferred, Ohio male, 65, non-nicotine, paying with bank draft. Now you can change this on this page if you want to. However, it just makes it easier, the process of the sale. First thing we're doing is we're underwriting the client. Second thing we're doing is we're quoting them on the quote compare page, and then we proceed right into the e-app. Now you can go to the e-app with the button on the tile, or you can click here. If a carrier, we just hyperlink out to the carrier's e-app. We don't actually handle the applications on our portal, nor does any of the information that you put in on our software get sent, or it's not communicated in any way to the carrier. So it's all completely separated. Now let's say I wrote this Mr. Jones and he got approved. So we're going to scroll down to Transamerica here. Now we're going to push it to the CRM. So one question that we get asked pretty frequently is, what are these, specifically these 2 buttons here, load and save? So when you hit save, you'll notice it saves in a JSON format. So this is a file format that if you try to open it on your computer, the computer won't be able to read it. I'm on my Windows machine here, but even if I was to use my Mac, I can't read it. It's an unreadable extension. It can only be read by the software. So when you hit load, if I want to load this case back in, let me just go back to downloads, and I can open it back up, and it would, I'll show you here. So if I wanted to load the case back in, loads the case back in here. Now, some people, what they'll do is they'll save the quote files and they'll store them maybe in a folder on their desktop or in another CRM that they use if you can upload files there. However, the internal way that we have for you to save quotes is our push to CRM function. So if I hit push to CRM, I can put in, let's just say Brian Jones, and I'm going to skip over this information, but for now, we'll just leave it the way it is. And I go over to my CRM. And we just have a very basic CRM. It's not go high level. It's not going to have the email drip and the fancy features that you might have, but it is a HIPAA compliant way for you to store your clients and their health conditions and medications. So if you want to set a reminder for yourself, it'll remind you for email for any kind of event. You can track, do a basic tracking of your sales statistics. We do have a calendar built in. If you want to schedule appointments, use the calendar in the CRM. And this is the most important page, which is the clients page. So on the clients page, you can download everything to a CSV file or an Excel file. You can upload. So it's very important. Make sure the columns have the following headers. We do have a separate video on this matter. On the rest of our channel, we have a number of videos of different tips and tricks, but you can upload a file. Most importantly, though, here's Brian Jones, who we just pushed over. Expand, and we can load this file. So the different functionalities are notes, any kind of medical information he has is going to be here. Any appointments we want to schedule with him, we can do so here, and the overview here. So when I click load, it'll push back that case exactly as I had it. And the reason that that's important is, let's say, if you're any kind of agent, you're going to be hopefully following up with your clients and talking to them about every 6 months, every 12 months, whatever it might be, because if you're not talking to them, someone else probably is. So in this case, if let's say I call Mr. Jones in 2 months and I say, how are you liking your policy? Everything's good. He got it in the mail. He's happy with it. And he asks, what is an extra $5,000 a month? What would an extra $5,000 in coverage be for me? You can just go into your CRM, click the load button. Chances are you don't remember offhand exactly what his health conditions are. You can say, okay, you're still taking the atenolol, nothing's changed, and then you'll be able to run a quote and actually help him add on coverage. Now, let's say Mr. Jones says, oh, actually, I got prescribed Spiriva a few weeks ago. I've had some trouble breathing, and I went to the doctor, and they prescribed me Spiriva. So we're going to type in Spiriva here. Spelling just is not my thing today, unfortunately, but here we go. And we're just going to say COPD, because that's what it's for. And we'll just say first fill. He just had it prescribed, so we'll just pop this back a few weeks. 10th. Finish. So now we're going to run the quote. And what we're going to see now is obviously a different set of carriers here. Just to explain the reason that Aetna, fun fact, if they're not taking more than 3 or more inhalers, you can actually get any kind of lung condition preferred, but just be very careful with this product. But either way, you'll see the purple question mark on the tiles here. So we'll actually show you why a result is showing the way it is in the system. So in this case, with trans, if they've ever been treated with Spiriva for COPD, it'll be standard. And now we have that in the system also for the declined carriers. So in this case, COPD is going to knock out Royal Neighbors. They're not available. Typically, COPD would go graded. However, it's not available in Ohio due to COVID restrictions, so that's not going to show. Some of these are children's whole life products, so they're not really what we're concerned with. But take a look at Americo here. If they've ever been treated with Spiriva for COPD, it goes guaranteed issue, and therefore the commission cut, which is something like 90-88%, we're not even going to show that product just because we don't ever want an agent having their commission cut that high. And then you can see Oxford, which is a much more standard cut. So if they've ever been treated with, or if they've been treated with Spiriva for COPD, any kind of COPD treatment within 3 years, it's going to be declined. So you can always see why a carrier is showing declined as well when you scroll down. So that'll help you actually show what's going on with the carriers. And you can see CFG here is a good example of pretty much everything showing. So we have the SSB star, we have a potential commission cut, we have an alert for that might trigger an underwriter's review, we have the parameters of the plan here, and we have the reason why it's showing graded with the button. So we try to give you every piece of information that we can to help you make the most informed and accurate decision. Now this video is we're about to hit the 30-minute mark, so I'm just going to wrap up with term and MedSupp here. So for term, you get the same interface as you get with the final expense. The only differences are the red dot will show you a little bit different information. So for American Amicable, for example, certain face amounts and ages will require a phone health, personal health history interview. We'll show that with the dot. For America Payment Protector, there's monthly income for this specific product. So always the red dot is also important on the term side. Don't neglect that. And then we do show the living benefits. So you have to look at the agent guide for the actual breakdown because they're all slightly different and it's a little bit wordy. But we will show you the basics of the living benefits included with a carrier. And of course you can compare ROP amounts and whatnot with the compare button. And run ROP quotes up here. So last thing we'll take a quick look at is MedSupp. Now MedSupp is in beta. We're not fully launching it with all of its features and whatnot until the 1st of January. However, it's a little bit different from the rest of the system. You can put in zip codes and instead of the state up here, you put in the age or date of birth. And we'll just run a quote here. So we have a number of carriers included right now. We don't have every single one. That'll be more so resolved over the next month. But we'll show you the policy fee, the household discount. Will automatically run the discount in the expand menu. If you're running, let's just say in this case a G, it'll highlight this is the basic chart of Medigap plans, what they do and don't cover. It's a point of sale tool so that you can use that to demonstrate for a client what is the difference between each plan, what they do and don't cover, or what they cover partially. And there are several features that we're still going to be adding. So there's a lot of e-app buttons that we don't have in yet that we're going to be getting in. This column, the coverage type column, is changing completely to reflect different class ratings and whatnot. And we are adding the plan info button to show the household discount rules, as that can vary by state. It can actually be pretty confusing. With most carriers, there's a number of different rules, and that's what we're going to be showing in the system. So just bear with us for MedSupp. We still have a lot to add in and change with that, but that is a basic overview of the system. Again, if you do have any questions while you're using it or while you're on the website, you can use our live chat support with the bot here. You can send us an email directly. If you're on the website itself, you can contact us with the form here, or you can email me directly, joe@fextoolkit.com, if you want to send me a message directly. Thanks for watching.